Hi, guys. All right.
All
It
right.
is time for that part of the show. The part, our favorite and most exciting part of the show, our most serious part of the show. And it's time for a moment in African history. We're doing a rewind today because stories like this need to be told and 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 told again, over and over and over again. So that's what we're going to do. And we're talking about Abdul Rahman ibn Sauri. So today we're going to delve deep into African history. We're going to go all the way back to 1788 as we recount the tale of an African prince who was stolen from his kingdom and sold into slavery. Okay? Oh, spoiler, he managed to make it back to Africa. So we'll come back to that. So you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Let's begin. So Abdul Rahman ibn Sauri was the West African royalty before he was enslaved on the Mississippi plantation. After a shackled journey across the Atlantic, Abdul Rahman ibn Sauri was desperate to make the man about to purchase him, Thomas Foster, understand his terrible mistake. He wasn't supposed to be enslaved. The 26-year-old was the heir to one of Africa's most influential kingdoms. But instead of freedom, his protestations earned him the derisive nickname Prince, which he'd carry on for the next 40 years of enslavement. Sauri had arrived in Natchez, Mississippi after being kidnapped by enemy troops in 1788 in his native Futajalan in what is now Guinea. The powerful royal was sold to slave traders for a few muskets and rum at the height of the global slave trade, when an estimated 80,000 Africans were captured, chained, and shipped across the Atlantic every year. Despite the scale of the trade, Sauri was one of 12.5 million Africans forced from their homes and sold to the New World between 1525 and 1866. Detailed narratives of individuals forced into bondage are limited, particularly of Muslim slaves like Sauri. He's an exception because he was a highly educated aristocrat. His dramatic quest for freedom would eventually catapult him into the national celebrity, which means his remarkable life is more documented than most. Sauri's story is an insight not only into the brutalities of slavery, which undergirded the global economy for generations, but on the way some enslaved people managed to manipulate dire circumstances. In his decades-long battle for liberty, Sauri would weave a web of duplicity so dramatic that it would ensnare not only American President Quincy Adams, but the Sultan of Morocco as well. So, going back to Mississippi when he was sold. Foster ignored his protestations and marched him to his frontier homestead in Natchez, Mississippi, which was still Spanish territory at the time. It was a far cry from Timbo, the trading hub where Sauri's father had consolidated power in Futajalan. Sauri had been educated in Islam and politics in neighboring Timbuktu, and by the time he was captured, he spoke at least 5 languages and was the head of a 2,000-person army. Sauri was horrified by how primitive and underdeveloped Natchez was. The kingdom of Futajalan was a very sophisticated society at the time, and Islamic scholars have said this was a period of real intellectual expansion. They had a constitution, they had laws. Foster made haste with cutting off Sauri's long hair, a sign of his nobility in Futajalan, and forcing him into vicious manual labor. Refusing to stomach the humiliation, Sauri ran. For weeks, he survived in dense, unfamiliar terrain. Wanted posters sprung up and slave hunters pursued him to no avail, but eventually he realized there was no escape. During the isolation of being alone in the wilderness, it dawned on him that he was no longer a prince. He was no longer a warrior. From that point on, his dignity was based on his ability to master the circumstances that he was in. It was also when he realized a return to Futajalan would not be possible, perhaps ever. Faced with no good options, Sauri returned to Foster and set about making himself indispensable. An uneducated man who grew tobacco and herded cattle, Foster knew little about cotton, a crop of growing consequence in North America. Sauri did, though, because cotton was grown in Futajalan. So with Sauri's help, Foster became one of the region's leading cotton producers. As his plantation swelled, so did Sauri's influence. He became a foreman and met 25-year-old Isabella, a midwife who was also enslaved by Foster, and Sauri going to marry her. The two had 5 sons and 4 daughters, and Sauri's relative freedom meant he could grow vegetables and sell them at a local market. One market day in 1807, a chance encounter would once again radically alter his life. So let's rewind. Decades earlier, a shipwreck had left a British surgeon named John Cox marooned on the West African shore. He only survived because he was rescued by a group of Fulanese who brought him to Timbo. He met Sauri and his royal family, who offered him medical care and friendship over a 6-month stay. In a remarkable twist of fate, Sauri ran into Cox at the market where he was hawking vegetables in Mississippi. Cox saw an opportunity not only to right a grave injustice, but to repay his debt to Sauri's family. He set about trying to buy his freedom, but Foster refused at any cost. Sauri had been with him for nearly 2 decades at that point, and his knowledge was too valuable to lose. Cox would spend the rest of his life trying to purchase his one-time host's liberty. While his efforts were ultimately fruitless, they did get Sauri another form of currency: local celebrity. Word of the fantastical story of chance meetings on either side of the Atlantic spread quickly around town, and when Andrew Marshall, a local newspaperman, heard about it, his interest was piqued. After Marshall found out that Sauri spoke Arabic, he leapt to the conclusion that Sauri was Moroccan. Not wanting to slow his enthusiasm and probably understand that the American racial hierarchy placed Moors well above West Africans, Sauri chose not to correct him. It would be the first of many strategic evasions Sauri would make in the years to come. Sauri asked Marshall to help him get a letter to Africa, and Marshall agreed. Sauri took several years, but eventually produced what was likely copied Quranic verses, and Marshall used them to authenticate, quote unquote, Sauri's Moorish origins, and attach his own letter expressing Sauri's desire to join his relatives in Morocco, which he sent to the United States consulate in Tangier. Word of Sauri's predicament eventually got to the Sultan of Morocco, and from there, the news of a captive royal wound its way back to the U.S. government. And worried about diplomatic relations, Secretary of State Henry Clay arranged for Sauri's release in 1828. Foster agreed to Sauri's release with compensation, under one condition: that he be transported directly back to Africa without ever enjoying the privileges of a free man within the United States of America. Sauri's freedom was imminent, but Isabella and his children were not. His determination to return to Fouta Djallon was matched only by his refusal to not do so without his family. As he prepared to travel to Washington, D.C., from which he would set sail to Africa, word of his epic grew. Newspapers covered his odyssey, and events along the route were planned in his honor. Everywhere he went, word of an enslaved man who could not only read and write, but was a skilled orator and claimed to be a Muslim prince, drew crowds of shocked and gawking onlookers. But before he left Natchez, Marshall gifted him a traditional Moorish costume for the trip. Sauri was a showman and planned to use the trip as an opportunity to fundraise for his children's freedom. A costume would only help. He was quickly able to buy Isabella's freedom, but he had to continue looking for funds and donations for his children, even asking the president, Quincy Adams, for funding, which Adams refused. Okay? So, his predicament caught the attention of an influential figure. This time was Thomas Gadulay, one of the founders of American School for the Deaf and part of the American Colonization Society. We talked about that before. They were sending people back to Africa. And he saw Sauri as an opportunity to spread Christianity across Africa. Sauri also saw an opportunity, the chance to rub shoulders with people who would donate to his fund to buy his children. And to prove his commitment to Christianity, Gadulay asked him to write the Lord's Prayer in Arabic for use in missionary work, and Sauri agreed. But this time, things were starting to change. Andrew Jackson was preparing for a presidential bid against Adams and used Sauri as a campaign tool, ridiculing Adams for his support. Foster caught wind of Sauri's efforts to free his enslaved children and threatened to revoke Sauri's freedom. Okay, so Marshall, not wanting to come down the wrong side, turned his back on Sauri. And that's how everything all went bad again, because Sauri's tale of his descent, everything unraveled. People found out he wasn't Moroccan, and all the donations started to dry up. Sauri had only had half the funds to buy his children back, to free his children. So once again, he set across the Atlantic, and that was it. He set out for Africa with his wife without his children. Well, their plan was to get to Africa and then send for their children when they made some money, desperately hoping their kids would be able to follow. So when he arrived in Monrovia, Liberia in March of 1829, the first thing he did was unroll his prayer mat and bow to the earth. Sick and weakened by the journey, he would contract a fever just 4 months later and die at age 67. He would never return to Fouta Djallon or see his children again, but he did manage to return to his beloved Africa. Years later, though, Gallaudet would find out that Sauri had not in fact written the Lord's Prayer in Arabic when proving his commitment to Christianity. He had instead copied from memory the first chapter of the Quran, which he knew from memory. Sometimes history is not only written by the victors. That's it. Did that depress you guys, or did that inspire you?
That was inspiring in the beginning and in the middle, and then I was like, wow.
I'm sorry.
Tragic.
I'm sorry. It's not tragic.
No, not to an extent.
It's tragic of what man does to man, man's inhumanity to man. And the fact that he was with Foster for so many years.
And he still did that to him.
Yeah, he worked with him for over 20 years. And he said, you know what, my guy, you've done so well for me. Here you go. Do your best. You're good for me. You're good for my work. You stay here. And if you have to go, you don't take anything. You go back to Africa immediately. I mean, it's just...
No, that's messed up.
And he had troops. He spoke several languages. He was a proper prince. Not like prince, everybody says I'm a prince. He was like an actual prince of a kingdom. Somebody who had hosted somebody for 6 months. Like, it's such a waste. It's such a waste. Slavery was such a waste of so many good people.
It was.
Absolute waste. Anyway, so
not to dwell on the past.
It took him 40 years to return to Africa, but he did it. 40 years.
And died in how many months after returning?
4 months.
Bruh.
4 months. And he never even got back to...
40 years, 4 months.
Never got back to Futajalo, and he was in Liberia when he died. This story is people of our people and their strength in the face of insane adversity, and we need to cling to in times of wavering confidence. Okay, Serena, how do you feel about that story? Make you feel bad or good? Inspired or? Marta, what do you think? Had you heard of a story of Ibn Sauri?
No.
What do you think about that story?
It's not really the cheeriest story in the world, is it?
No.
Kind of ends on a lull.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's inspiring at the same time. It's inspiring.
It'll make for a good movie.
Absolutely. And I think he has descendants. I think somebody have found who they are and they've kind of banded together. He does have descendants because his kids were left in America. He and his wife came back, but he couldn't buy his children. He had to leave them behind. But 9 children.
That's mad.
9.
With stuff like this, that's my personal take on it. We learn on it and we
learn from it.
Move along. We don't hold on to the past.
Yeah, but we can say, you know what, this is great. Look at this person, what they did, and get inspired by his feel. He never changed. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna zig. Oh, I can't zig anymore. I'm gonna zag. You know, what am I gonna do? He lived with his situation. He actually ran like, what the hell? What is this place? This is not Futajalo. This is Mississippi. Ew. And he ran, and then he couldn't survive on his own in the wilderness because he wasn't, he couldn't do it. So he went back to his captor. Crazy. Right, we're going to finish out the show on a fun note because, we don't want to feel bad. And Kwaku has prepared some tongue twisters in... Kwaku, what language is it?
Fanti.
Fanti.
Yeah.
We're going to try.
Excuse me to all my Fanti people out there if I butcher this myself.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Are you going to say it after me or...
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say the whole thing and then break it up for me.
I'll say it very slowly.
Okay.
So, Kwapa... Kopam, kohunu mampam.
Okay.
Jaipam, kopam mampam. Mampam, fropam, nampa.
Right. Say it all together. Let's hear it as a sentence.
Okay. Kwapa kopam kohunu mampam. Jaipam, kopam mampam. Mampam, fropam, nampa.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let's start. All right.
You want to know what it means first?
Yes.
Okay, so Kwapa, this guy, goes to the farm to clear his bush and sees an anteater and then stops to chase the anteater and the anteater climbs the tree.
Okay.
Is it true?
Yeah, because tongue twisters are always daft.
No.
All right, here we go. I'm ready. Okay. Let's break it down.
Kwapa,
Kopam,
kohunu mampam.
Kohunu mampam.
Nice. Jaipam, kopam mampam. Mampam fropam.
Mampam fopam.
Napa.
What does sound Chinese?
I don't even think I'm saying it perfectly.
You're fine. I'm sure they're going to be very angry with you. All right, I like it.
And there's one that my mom likes to say. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's more of an insult. But it's like, if you're trying to insult someone, she's like, when you de acher the bacher.
What does that mean?
Your face like the child of a frog.
When him there. Acher. Nibacher.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you so much.
No, don't mention it.
Guys, we have... Okay, no. We have to do African proverbs. We're not going to go anywhere without African proverbs. I know. I have only 1 minute, but we're going to do it. Okay, here we go. Why am I not ready for this part? I'm usually very, very ready. Give me 1 second. Here we go. All right. So, African proverbs are something we do all the time. We always do it on the show because there's a way we communicate in Africa. We use proverbs for everything. You know, to give wisdom, to pass it down generations. Every culture around the world has proverbs, but we in Africa in particular use it all the time. Now, these are going to be in English. They've been translated from the original language, but I will tell you what country it came from. And, you know, we don't explain the meaning. You get the meaning. So here we go. Number 1. This is from Nigeria, actually. Look for a black goat while it's still daytime. Look for a black goat while it's still daytime. Okay. Then from Malawi, you have smooth seas do not make for skillful sailors. Smooth seas do not make for skillful sailors. Okay. Then from Cameroon, you have if money were to be found up in trees, most people will be married to monkeys. If money were to be found up in trees, most people will be married to monkeys. And then the last one, I think I've said this one before, but I just love it very, very much. It's from Zambia. And it says, if you want to improve your memory, lend somebody money.
Nice.
If you want to improve your memory, lend somebody money.
Definitely.
You don't forget.
And
all right.
There's this one from this famous Nigerian actor. I don't know if it's true though, but he's like, the man who can swallow a whole coconut has faith in his backside. I don't know how true that is.
I think that's a proverb, but those are words of wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, we've been here. We've had fun. We've had a great time. We've had Kweku here.
Hello.
We've had all his opinions. It's been wonderful. Serena's here. Martin, thank you so much for all your opinions as well. We will do this again. Kweku, come back all the time. Not come back sometime. Come back all the time. It's fantastic having you. And thank you so much. Thank you all Kweku's friends on the live who are with us today. That was great having you. That was kind of a change. I liked it. We should do that again sometime. Yeah. All right. It's Bibi here, and I'm signing off. I'll be back next week with more exciting interviews, spotlights, history, music, and everything in between. Until then, stay proudly African, Ghanaian, Kenyan, Scottish, and everything you are. All right. Here's Sawa Sawa by Bruce Melody to play us out. Bye, everybody. See you next week.